How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving my first impressions on the brand new suspension I just put on my 2003 Saab 9.3. If you missed my last video, I installed brand new shocks and springs on this car, as well as some mounts, bearings, you know, other minor things like that. But the kit that's on the car is from Maptun. The struts are Bilstein B8s, and the springs are Maptun's lowering springs. They're 35mm lowering springs, which means that it should lower it a little bit less than 1.5 inches from factory ride height. Now, I've only put about 20 miles on the car so far, so I want to talk about my first impressions. I also don't believe the car is at its final ride height, because with the old suspension I had on it, which was just the stock struts with eBay lowering springs, so this could take a couple 100 miles for it to fully settle, and it is sitting a little bit higher than it was with the old suspension. I think at the end it'll sit at about the same height the old suspension was, so that's why I'm not quite set on the final ride height. Now keep in mind, I'm on 18-inch wheels. Yes, I know my center cap is missing, but you can see where the ride height is about. It's at a good stance, you know, it's not too low to where the car is hard to drive, but it's not, if it was on stock suspension with 18s, it would look like a monster truck. So I think it has a really good stance to it so far, and if it lowers just a little bit more, like I think it will, it'll just fit it even better. So stance-wise, I can't give a full opinion on that at the moment, but I'm sure it'll settle down and look even better. So what I want to do today, and I'm going to shut up and get in the car here in a second, is take the car up one of my favorite mountain roads here. I'm at South Mountain in Phoenix, Arizona. There's a road that goes the whole way up to the peak, way up there, lots of twists and turns. So we should be able to have a little bit of fun, but yeah, let's go ahead, jump in the car, get to it, and I'll talk about it some more once we get on the road. I've always kind of thought that the MG9.3 overall is probably the best handling Saab platform, especially when I had my Turbo X, the cross-wheel drive added to that. It was just, it was amazing. It handled fantastically. I also want to compare the coilover suspension, the Maptun coilover suspension versus this, and pretty much I'll sum it up right now what I think if you're deciding between a suspension setup like this versus a coilover setup from Maptun. So the coilovers are great if you're looking for something that's more aggressive, something that is, you know, even more sporty. And the big bonus of the coilover setup is that you also have that adjustability. But even when the coilovers were on a soft setting, they obviously still rode more harsh than a stock setup, at least from what I had experienced. Now, obviously, when you go with a setup like this, there's no adjustability, and that's not really a bad thing. It's just a fact of the suspension setup. So this, I think, if you don't necessarily know if you want coilovers, if you want to spend the extra money on them, I think this setup right here is perfect for a good, like, kind of intermediate, like, you want a more aggressive suspension setup, but you, what is this Ford Edge doing? I've already hit a ton of traffic. Oh, they're pulling off. Oh, thank God. Okay, because I was about to pull off. All right, let's kick her in the manual mode. It's a nice, cool morning too, so she's making a lot of boost. There's a Trailblazer somewhat close in front of me. I mean a 97X, sorry. So far, the turn-in, there's like no body roll on the turns. Oh my gosh, this thing handles so well. For being a front-wheel drive car, my gosh. That's why I say this is the best handling Saab, this chassis, not a front-wheel drive automatic 9.3, but this chassis in general is easily the best handling Saab. I mean, taking it through those turns there, you know, not pushing the car fully to its limits around the turns, obviously, just because a lot of those were blind turns. I don't really know if there's a biker around the turn, you know, so I don't want to go too full send. But wow, yeah, the body roll is non-existent. You know, if you're taking the turn harder, maybe there's a little bit of body roll, but from what I can tell, all right, this turn right here, I'll take this with a little bit more speed just to see if there's any body roll. I didn't feel any body roll. I took that turn at about 35-40 miles an hour. It was a relatively sharp turn. I felt no body roll there. That was fantastic. Let's hit the road again. So another thing I want to talk about here is ride quality. How, you know, is it comfortable so far? I'm pushing this car to its limits right now, so, but that's more entertaining than me just driving around on a boring road. So in terms of ride quality, right, that's what I was trying to talk about. Ride quality wise, I'd say it's, you know, you're not going to get the same comfort as stock suspension, and that's just a fact of any aftermarket sporty suspension. It's not going to be as comfortable as stock suspension. Now, when you talk about comfort, ride quality, another factor that plays into that is wheel size. So I have 18-inch wheels, which is 2 inches bigger than the stock wheels that came on this car. So that's another thing you have to consider, is with the bigger wheels, you feel more little bumps in the road, things like that. There's less rubber between the wheel and the pavement. So that's part of what plays into it as well. But it's not a harsh ride by any means, you know. I definitely feel the little cracks in the road just a little bit, but it's not unbearable. It's not trying to break my back. It's not stiff. It's not like there's no suspension travel at all. There's definitely plenty of suspension travel, that's for sure. I really see this kit as a good middle ground between coilovers and stock suspension. Now, if you're really on a budget, you can just go with the lowering springs. I think their lowering springs are around $200, maybe a little bit more, and their lowering springs are fantastic. Obviously, these exact lowering springs are on this car. However, you might run into the problem that I did, which is when you pull off your old shocks in 3 or 4 years, they're completely blown and you didn't even know it, because it's going to put a lot of extra strain on those shocks, because they're not meant to have that more strain put on them. So, I think in summary, I would say, if you're kind of on the fence, do I want coilovers, do I not want coilovers, how much do I want to spend, you know, is it worth the extra money to me? And that, again, that really depends on what you're trying to do. If it's still a daily driver for you, you just want something that's going to lower the car a bit, make it a bit more aggressive to drive, handle better, then I think this is what you want. But if you're, you know, or if you want that adjustability, then go for the coilovers. But if you're going to be more like track focused, it's more of a weekend car, you don't necessarily care if it rides more stiff. It's not to say their coilovers are trying to break your back when you drive it, because they're most certainly not, but they are more stiff than this setup right here. There's a big dip here, don't want to rip my lip off. This kit, I think, runs around $600 or $700 for everything, which in my opinion is a fantastic deal. For 4 brand new Bilsteins and 4 new lowering springs, all extremely high quality parts, I think that's a fantastic price. Their coilovers, depends front wheel drive versus cross wheel drive, but add a couple $100s on top of that. But these are an obvious upgrade. They're much better than stock suspension. The stock 9.3, you know, there's not a ton of body roll or anything, but with stock springs and shocks, it's not going to handle nearly as well as it does with this. And you know, you can do other things to improve handling, like get strut braces, things like that. We caught up to this Trailblazer again. I wasn't even driving too fast either. That's a bit disappointing. Go straight. Go straight. Oh, he's going straight. Hell yeah. All right. So I think, you know, this video hasn't been my most cohesive thought out video. I apologize for that because I'm trying to drive and do this at the same time and, you know, kind of focus on taking turns well and everything like that. But hopefully you guys still got some informed opinion. I think what I'm going to do now, though, is enjoy this last mile and a half or so of road before we hit the peak. And shut up and let you guys listen to the car and everything. I do notice if you try and take these sharp turns above like 35 miles an hour, the traction light turns on and I can feel the car kind of struggling a little bit. That's no sign of the suspension, that's just, you know, the car. At red line in second gear, and I really don't want to shift into third gear, so that's why I'm kind of like, when I hit that 55 mile an hour mark, I'm like, all right, let's slow down a little bit. And this is a sketchy turn right here too, so yeah, I think without further ado, if you have any questions below about the suspension setup, let me know. In terms of the final ride height, I haven't recorded the outro of my actual suspension video yet because I want to drive the car as much as I can before I do that to make sure the suspension has actually settled. But when you're driving at low speeds, again, I feel all the little like cracks. Like if there's a big crack or a big imperfection in the asphalt, you know, you just feel it a little bit. I think most of that is a product of the bigger wheels, though, that I've had on the car for pretty much since I bought it. But again, it's going to be more aggressive than your stock setup, but it's not going to try and break your back. I mean, from what I have seen, I've probably put about 50 miles on it so far. Even when I drove here 10 miles on surface streets, it was extremely comfortable. So with that being said, though, guys, that's all I've got for today. You can see out here we have reached the peak. So I'll talk to you all later. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Let me know what other videos you want to see on the 9.3, and I'll see you all next time.
Take it easy.